So good morning, this is U.S. History. Today's date is 10/12, 2020. I hope that everybody is doing well this morning. We're going to start off with some review. So let me get to my share screen here. And this will help some of the people. I know that Shirley Ann was a new student. Hold on one second. Let me just make sure I'm doing this right. So make sure you guys can all see me. Okay. All right. So can everybody see the PowerPoint right there that says U.S. History? Somebody give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So good morning, of course, to everyone. Apologize for being a few moments late there. That picture is a picture of Abraham Lincoln, who, fun fact about Abraham Lincoln, he was our first Republican president. So if anyone ever asks you who was the first Republican president, you can answer them today. You can stump your parents and say, who was the first Republican president? And it was Abraham Lincoln. So good morning and welcome. So some review. We talked about some of these and we're going to review the checkpoints that aren't, all checkpoints are on Summit at this point. If anyone has a question, I did send out some progress reports to students that were in my cohort or my homeroom. So if you got a progress report and there's something on there from me that you are, if you have a concern about your progress, you can simply see me about that either in lab or send me an email. So my first question is, what is an immigrant? We have reiterated this point a couple times. So someone either vocally or someone through chat, tell me, what is an immigrant? In your own words, what's an immigrant?
Someone that doesn't belong but is here not by law.
Someone that doesn't belong here by law. Okay, that's a definition. That's one of our classifications of immigrants. Does anybody else have not a better or a different idea of if you had to define what an immigrant is? You can look underneath. If you look on the PowerPoint right there, it's right there in front of you. So the United States is primarily consisted of immigrants. All right, it's a North American continent. And immigrants are people who came here from other lands, or they're the descendants of immigrants. So everyone that is in this Zoom room right now, whether we want to, unless you are Native American, whether you're Cherokee or Seminole or Iroquois, if you are one of the original Indian tribes, then you are not an immigrant, or if you are a Moorish American, you are not an immigrant. Everyone else, whether you are Caucasian, whether you are African American, whether you are Latino, and it doesn't matter what your ethnic descent is, you are an immigrant. By definition, we are all immigrants in this country. Okay. From their countries of origins, immigrants brought different languages, ideas, beliefs, customs, hopes, and dreams. We saw this in our first PowerPoint. Immigrants bring music, immigrants bring ideologies, immigrants bring religion, immigrants bring a different point of view than what the average American has. So these different ways of life mixed together with the ideas and the ways of life people already present in North America. At one point, we were called a melting pot. This country was called a melting pot. Why would you think that the United States would be called a melting pot? What's the inference? What are we trying to infer when we call the United States a melting pot? A melting pot of what?
Like basically already done. Or I don't know. Last long.
That's okay. It's a melting pot of cultures, right? It's a melting pot of people. It's a melting pot of ideas. This is one of the unique things about the United States. If you went to China, I would say that I don't have stats on these, but I would be sure that 90% of the population there is Chinese. This is not indicative of the United States. The United States has many different people here with many different cultures, ideas. The First Amendment gives us the right to free speech. It gives us the right to assembly. It also gives us the right to religion. So immigrants are just people who are coming here from somewhere else, um, and they're bringing their ideas. So this leads to a multicultural heritage that adds energy and richness to American society that would not be possible otherwise. Most of the original colonists of the United States were mostly from the British Isles and Germany. So they were from Europe. So that's a little bit of review. So the classifications of immigrants. I'm sorry, I got some chat. Let me see what I have here.
That was me.
Okay. Yes, and that is definitely a good that is a good point. A mixed salad more than a melting pot, because I like to say, is it Jess, that a salad? The reason that I like that analogy is because when you have a salad, tomatoes are still tomatoes, spinach is still spinach, cucumbers are still cucumbers, you know, croutons are still croutons. Even though they're on the same plate, they are separate things from each other. Melting pot kind of infers that they're going together smoothly. So I may steal that salad analogy if you don't mind. I like that. A salad bowl, that's a good definition.
Go for it.
And as you and what students, so what Miss Jessica is saying is that salad tends to be, you know, all in one spot, but everybody has their own individual identity. So that's a good way of saying it. So these classifications of immigrants, we have people who are called refugees. The root word of refugees is refuge. These are people who are escaping persecution, such as war, famine, disease, political persecution. They leave their countries and they come here. We've had a lot of refugees from Cuba. We've had a lot of refugees from Haiti. We've had a lot of refugees from war-torn parts of the world, such as Syria, comes to the United States. In the beginning, someone said immigrants that don't belong here. I can't remember exactly who said it, maybe Ashley, but those are called illegals. We used to call them illegal aliens. That terminology to me is a little bit outdated because aliens to me are guys with large heads that come from Mars or Venus or Saturn, not someone who comes from another country trying to find a job or a better life for their children. We have a group of people called dreamers. We'll look at this a little bit later in class. If we don't get into it today, we will definitely get to it on Thursday. So the dreamers were children who were brought to the United States as children, which means they didn't have any fault. It's not at like 20 years old, they decided, I'm going to go from one country to another. These were people who were brought here with their parents, and their parents brought them when they were very young, and they didn't realize that they were breaking any laws. President Obama had put legislation in place to give dreamers because they are seeking permanent residency and citizenship. Most dreamers are Americans. They don't know anything about Mexico. They don't know anything about Costa Rica or Haiti or Africa or Spain or wherever they may descend from. But that is one of the classifications. And our last classification are migrant workers. And migrant workers are temporary workers that are brought here to the United States, and it's usually in a work capacity. So these are the people that you think about who they do what we call manual labor, like picking fruit, clearing crops, things along those lines. So the main theme of our section is changing attitudes toward immigrants or to immigrants. We're focusing on two large immigrant populations. The first is the Irish. And if you look on the screen here, you'll see a picture of some Irish immigrants and some facts. It is estimated that as many as 4.5 million Irish arrived in America between 1820 and 1930. That's a lot of people. If you think about it this way, the last time I checked, the population of Philadelphia was about 1.1 or 1.2 million people. Imagine that times 4. So 4 whole cities of Irish showing up to the United States. They constituted over 1/3 of all immigrants to the United States. In 1840s, they comprised nearly of half of all the immigrants to this nation. So this is why we are focusing on the Irish, because they represented almost half of all immigrants by the 1840s. Of course, we're also looking at the plight of Black Americans, because even though they were already here, they weren't indigenous, which means they weren't from America. They were brought here through the slave trade and generations to be workers, but they were not considered Americans. They were not considered to have equal rights. They were not considered in many circles to even be human beings. They were simply a capacity to work. They were treated as cattle. They had no rights, no civil rights, no basic human rights, and definitely no constitutional rights. So along with the Black, which would probably make up, remember there was 4 million freed slaves after the Civil War. There was also this large group of Catholics. So we'll be going back and forth focusing on the Irish Catholics and primarily Black Americans and the types of discrimination and attitudes toward immigrants that they had. So Irish were seen as different. They didn't share the same cultures and the same beliefs and the same history as Americans. Because they were Catholics, which was a big thing, different belief. Most people here were Protestant, Methodists, we had Quakers, but the large primary of most people here were Protestant, Methodists, Lutherans. They were not Catholics. So Catholics were just seen as different, and because they were immigrants. Remember the word resentment? Can somebody tell me what the word resentment meant? Does anybody remember that word, resentment? I'll put it in the chat. What is resentment? We talked about this a couple times.
A regret.
Yes.
A regret of doing something.
Good. A regret, an anger, a bitterness toward a group of people. Good. So they had resentment. Oops, I lost myself here. Apologize. They had resentment against these Irish people because for the same reasons that there's problems today with immigration. When someone comes to a country and they're seen as different or they're seen as a threat, remember, there's 2 main reasons that attitudes change towards immigration, and that is the economy and their usefulness. We saw in the Civil War that there was 435,000 Irish immigrants who were enlisted in both not only the Union and the Confederate Army. So they consisted of a large group of immigrants. Remember also, by the 1840s, the Irish were composed of almost all of the half of the immigrants in this nation. One of our first checkpoints was the Know Nothing Party, and we're going to review that. But the Know Nothing Party was also known as the American Party, and they carried resentment against these Irish Catholics for the same reasons that a lot of people do today. So without rehashing that whole section, we'll just remember that they were reluctant secessionists. They didn't care about the Northern War of Attrition. They didn't care about the Southern's right to keep slaves. As far as they're concerned, they were Irish people, and that was pretty much it. They stuck to themselves, and their loyalties were to their families and to Irish as a whole, and not to this country that they had come to. They just were not loyal. So Black Americans. Now this gets a little bit hefty here, so I'm going to try to condense some of it for you, paraphrase some of it for you. So we know the Emancipation Proclamation, 1863, freed a lot of slaves, but we had to fight a civil war for the right for Black people to be free. We're going to look at the Reconstruction Amendments and what they were, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. If you've done your checkpoint, you should have some familiarity what these three amendments were. After the emancipation and 2 more years of war, the nation was still unprepared to deal with the question of full citizenship for newly freed Black population. So Reconstruction lasted from 1866 to 1877. I believe that it ended with the election of Rutherford B. Hayes as president and the removal of Andrew Johnson as president. Was aimed at reorganizing the Southern states after the Civil War, providing the means for remitting them into the Union and defining the means by which whites and Blacks could live together in a non-slave society. So when you hear the word Reconstruction, what was being reconstructed? What part of the country had to be reconstructed? What part of the country was destroyed during the Civil War? Quay, we will, I will have a conversation with you about the checkpoints, okay? Don't worry about the grades can be changed. So Zenelia said, good, the South, okay? So the South is what had to be Reconstruction, means the reconstruction of the Southern states. Also the reconstruction of Black Americans. How were Black Americans, who were for almost 200 years at that point, from the 1619s, who were treated as second-class citizens, who were treated as work capacity, who were treated as slaves, how are they going to successfully coexist in a society full of people who were resentful toward them and who had anger toward them? So during the years after the war, Black and white teachers from the North and South, missionary organizations, churches, and school worked tirelessly to give the emancipation an opportunity to learn. Former slaves of every age took advantage of the opportunities to become literate, which means that they learned how to read. In our last class, we looked at the springing up of hate groups such as the Ku Klux Klan. You also had political parties such as the Know Nothing parties, who held these deep-seated resentments against immigrants and against freed slaves. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, we're going to go over them in a minute. So checkpoints 1 and 2. Let's look at checkpoints 1 and 2. If we go to Summit, you find Summit real quick, and I'm going to share with you that way if you have any questions about what's going on in Summit. Okay. All right, let me share screen with you for Summit. Now, is there anyone here that does not have access to Summit or the codes for Summit? Is there anyone in the class that is unable to get on Summit? Okay, so I'm going to take that as a yes. So I'm going to share my Summit screen with you, and we're going to go over the checkpoints that have been assigned already. So your class is U.S. History. You have 2 checkpoints that are up so far. The first one was Civil War and Immigration, which we were just talking about. If you click on that, you'll find the answer set for checkpoint 1. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4. That comes from the PowerPoint presentation on the Know Nothing parties. Well, where do I find those? Where do I find that information out about the Know Nothing parties? Well, if I go to resources and I scroll down here at the bottom and click, you will find the same exact PowerPoint that I am showing you connected to Summit. So I open it up, and it should be the same exact PowerPoint that we are looking at now. So for checkpoint, excuse me?
I said, what are we supposed to click on? The Civil War or the Reconstruction?
Well, the first checkpoint was Civil War and Immigration. Okay. So that's your first checkpoint. That'll give you these 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. You find the information by going here on the front, and there's a PowerPoint that I put up right here down the bottom, the Know Nothing Party and Immigrant resentment. Inside of that packet is hyperlinks, articles, videos, and questions to be asked. That is your checkpoint number 1. So is there any questions on checkpoint number 1 and how to find the
Okay.
answers? Let's look at checkpoint number 2, where we're at now. We're about to go into industrialization, but we're going to stick with the first 2. So I look at Reconstruction, immigration. This is checkpoint 2. There are 5 questions. What was Reconstruction? What role did immigrants play in the Civil War? How did the vagrancy law limit the rights of Black immigrants? Define the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments and what they provided Black Americans. And the 5th question is, what is white male resentment? So you say, Mr. Townsend, where do I find the information for that? Same thing. If you go down and you look, you will see Reconstruction and changing attitudes. I added that. That is the PowerPoint that has all your information. Ahmad, I'll check after class. I'm just trying to make sure as a generalized, I think you're in good shape. But as a generalized for those people who weren't here or who have missed something. So everything is on Summit. There's nothing out here that you're going to have to go third party to find. Your checkpoint is right in front of you. When you open up this Reconstruction and changing attitudes on Summit, you're either going to end up with a Google slide. If it comes down to history, 928, it'll open up. You should be able to see what I'm seeing, which is, sorry about that, which would come from that day off of Summit. You weren't here on, let's say you weren't here September 29th. Well, how do I find out about post-Civil War immigration attitudes? Everything is there. What is Reconstruction? What happened at the end of the Civil War? What do the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments provide? What were reluctant secessionists when we talked about the Irish? Here are some hyperlinks on, some of them actually are a lecture from other scholarly endpoints or professors that will tell you about our 2 focus groups, the Irish and the Blacks. So they will tell you certain things that are going on in history. They tell you, right here, it tells you what happened with vagrancy laws. That's one of your questions. One of the attitudes today, so we looked at a professor from Vanderbilt who was explaining how, remember the 2 attitudes are usually war and economy. I also call it usefulness and economy. But this country has suffered a white male resentment over and over again through history. If you don't know what that is, then you cut and paste the hyperlink and you watch the professor explain what white male resentment is. At the end of the PowerPoint, there are the 5 questions. They are the same exact 5 questions that are in Summit. So your information is self-contained within these PowerPoint slides. You'll also will find additional, if I put anything additional that I want you to learn, down here at the bottom. Okay? So you have know nothing for 1, and then for 2, you have Reconstruction and changing attitudes. So is anybody confused on how to input and access Summit? And if you have concerns, you can send me private messages. We can set up office hours and we can get it figured out. I'm willing to work with you. That's why I'm here almost 2 hours a day in the afternoon. So if you have any problems, please feel free to reach out to me, okay? So that's checkpoint 1 and checkpoint number 2. Remember, Civil War was our first point, and then we went to Reconstruction. Today we are talking about, we're going over some of them again, but we're talking about, excuse me, apologize. We're talking about what is industrialization. I don't know why this is not going away. Give me a moment. I'm looking at the chat. Sammy, right now you just have to pay attention to this presentation. You won't have another checkpoint due again till the end of the week, Okay, so this is more of a review, and we're going to add some new information. So all you need to do is just pay attention, okay? I'm sorry, I'm trying, this has got like 8 screens open. Will you please go back to where I want you to? Okay, can we see that screen again now? The checkpoint 1s and 2s, just somebody give me a thumbs up. Can we see that? Okay, thank you, Ahmad.
We
Okay,
can see it.
so the Civil War and immigration is what we just went over. Someone tell me, what was the U.S. Civil War? What was it? Define it. What was the Civil War? Who was it fought between? Was it fought between America and another country? Ashane, what do you think is the Civil War? If you had to have a definition, what's the Civil War? I see somebody came in chat, so I'm going to go to that. Oh, Ahmad, what was the Civil War? We talked about it the first couple of days of class. What was the Civil War? What was it? Who fought in it? There were 2 factions. One side was called the Union. So if you're done, you say, okay, different state battles.
I don't really remember, but wasn't it 2 states fighting?
Yes.
It was North then?
Good. It was more than just 2 states. It was the northern part of the country versus the southern part of the country. I actually happen to have, this is old, but this is a Union soldier cap, okay? So this would be, the Confederates were gray, but if you saw a Union soldier, you would be able to tell them in the field, because this would be the type of hat that they would wear in the field, okay? So this is the Union, and then we had, you're welcome, thank you for coming, Jessica. So the Union against the South, excellent. The North versus the South. That's what the Civil War was. And it was fought over many different reasons. Some of them were political. Remember, usefulness. We know that immigrants played a large role in the Civil War. What groups of people were treated with different attitudes after the Civil War? What was the first group of people that we mentioned? These folks up here. Who are these folks up here in this picture? These were the Irish, okay? So the Irish were treated differently. The freed slaves were treated differently. The 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment we're going to go over. Their significance, you're going to need to know why. By the way, as a heads up for your overall project for this class, you will be interviewing an immigrant. I will give you a template. If you're unable to find an immigrant to interview, I will assist you, okay? Just so you know what's coming at the end of your 9 weeks. Your project will be to interview an immigrant and to make a small presentation about where they're from, okay? So Reconstruction was checkpoint 2, vagrancy laws, black codes, and white male resentment. Once again, all that information is there for you on Summit. If you have any difficulty with understanding it or not being able to answer, please feel free to reach out to me. Most of the day, I am on this computer from the morning to the night. I have a second job where I also tutor children via computer. So for my students, whether you're one of my mentors or you're just in the class, if you have like Quay, we'll get together and talk. If you have any concerns about your grades, remember this is new for me. It's a lot of information to take in, so I am trying to make sure that everything is correct. So just work with me, have a little patience with me. All right, so for checkpoint number 1, we want to know what 2 groups were treated differently, the Irish and the Black. What roles the immigrants play. They were a large force in both the Northern and Southern armies. So that is a review of checkpoints 1 and 2. If you want to be current for this class, those are the 2 checkpoints that need to be completed. Do I have any students who think that they're not done with checkpoint number 1 and checkpoint number 2? So I know now.
Me, but I'm doing it right now.
Okay. Thank you, Ashane. And also, if remember, sometimes in Summit, I may give you some feedback. And that doesn't mean that your work is wrong. I want you to understand that. It just means that I think there's something that needs to be changed or reviewed that I would like you to do. Okay. Well, hold on a second. I just got a bunch of chats. So, okay. Azanelia, if you need, just get with me and work on the first one. I'd be glad to help you. You can make an appointment with me. You just send me a private message. Ahmad, how do you check feedback? Okay. Let me answer this for Ahmad since we already in this. Let me go to Summit. All right. Now, Ahmad, do you mind if I share your screen with the other students so I can show you how to do this? Do you mind if I share your work? Ahmad? I'm looking in the chat here, bud. Okay, so you do mind me showing. Okay. So let me see if I could show you how to handle this. So when you do, I have notifications. 6 students requested feedback, okay? So I go in, I look at your, say it says needs feedback. So I go in, here's your checkpoint. Now, I see that this student did everything that I asked her to do. I highlighted, and I wanted her to be sure that she understood that resentment is a feeling of anger. So if one group in society is progressing, others see it as a threat. Good job on the rest of the questions. So she went back, she changed her answer, and she put, do I copy that down? Yes, you can copy that down because I gave her the correct answer. So instead of review, I'm going to change that student's to continue, which means that she is good, and send. Oops, continue. And I just sent that to that student. So Ahmad, what you need to do is you need to go, if anything is highlighted with a comment or go back and change it, all you need to do is go back and change what I'm asking you to change. I'm not asking you to resubmit the entire assignment. I'm only asking you to resubmit things that I don't think are complete or that need a little bit more work. Does that make sense? Does that help you, Ahmad? Okay, good. So everything in there is changeable. So let's go back to our, I apologize. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. And is there any other questions about what's going on? Shirley, I know you're new. Why don't we make an appointment? Do you have time, Shirley, to meet with me sometime this week? I'll send you a private message, Shirley, if you didn't hear me. Zanelia, we can also get together and, okay, I see that. We can also get together and even on Google Hangouts or something, we'll get that figured out. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. So that's the main two things. If you do your checkpoint number 1 and checkpoint number 2, you're putting yourself in a really good position to be caught up, okay? So we are going to watch a video now about post-Reconstruction. And there's 3 questions there. If you have a phone, you can take a picture of it, or you can write it down, or do you want me to cut and paste it and put it into the chat box? Which would be the best way? Chat box. Okay, let me get those questions off here. Command C and chat. Hold on. Okay, so this should give you, I don't know why it's not showing up in the chat. Okay, can you see the 4 questions? What did the enactment of Jim Crow laws prohibit? When was slavery abolished? I think it doubled up there. Okay, yeah, so those other 2 are just double ups. And we want to explain the 13th and 13th through 15th Amendment. So I'm going to share my screen with you. This will probably be the last thing we'll be able to get through today, but we will continue our next class. So let's look at the video that I have right here. Let's see. All right, and where did it go? All right. I'll share this with you in 1 moment. Apologize for the delay. Can everyone see the
12-year period?
Can everyone see the video? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So those 4 questions that are in chat are what I want you to focus on in the video, okay?
Following the conclusion of the American Civil War is known as Reconstruction. Reconstruction, as historians say, is possibly the birth of the American Civil Rights Movement. Why? With the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, African Americans now were no longer in chains, no longer indebted to slave owners. They were free, they were emancipated, they had the opportunity to vote. They were given suffrage rights, the right to vote, but that was only African American men. And then the 15th Amendment gave African Americans equal protection under the law. So under the Constitution of the United States, African Americans were given no provision that they were second-class citizens. No, they should be treated fairly underneath the Constitution of the United States, the law of the United States. Reconstruction was a tumultuous period in American history, lasting from 1865 to 1877. The era of Reconstruction began at the conclusion of the American Civil War in 1865, and it ended with the election of President Rutherford B. Hayes in 1877. 1865 proved a pivotal year in American history because in 1865, the 13th Amendment officially eradicated slavery in the United States. You may be asking yourself, wait a second, I thought Abraham Lincoln eradicated slavery with the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, that was an executive order, but it was made official by the 13th Amendment that was added to the Constitution. Also, Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse, signaling the end of the American Civil War. The Confederacy had lost. The Confederacy now needed to join back with the Union. Then Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Vice President Andrew Johnson would have to assume the presidency, and he would become the 17th president of the United States. When Johnson became president, he announced a moderate restoration plan to bring the South back to the Union. He issued pardons to most Confederates and required states to ratify the 13th Amendment, which freed slaves and eradicated the slavery institution from the United States forever. You know, you have to think, Confederates, even though that in their ideologies they were wrong, slavery was wrong. The institution of slavery is wrong in any time period. You have to understand that when they were brought back into the Union, they were very resistant to change. First and foremost, the entire South was war-torn. William Tecumseh Sherman's march to the sea ravaged much of the South. There were farms that were just destroyed, livestock killed, buildings in tatters. And so the South was left not only in humiliation, they had to join back with the Union and make all kinds of concessions that affected their culture, their economics, and their livelihoods so that they could be back in the Union. Southern states had the audacity to issue codes and laws that prevented African Americans from having equal rights as whites. Mississippi established a system of black codes in 1865. Black codes limited the rights of freed African Americans, and they unfortunately became common throughout the post-Civil War South. Black codes prevented African Americans from having equal access to vote.
Okay, guys, we are running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a note for today is Monday. On Thursday, we are at just want to make a marker of where we're at. We are on slide 8. So we will look at the second slides. We will look at the rest of this PowerPoint presentation next class. And then you will have, it's not going to be a new checkpoint until, I don't want to issue a new checkpoint until all of those students are done. Now, I will put this video up early for you guys. So if I have students who need to, like I know Christina, you ask always if there's work, I can put the work up early. And if you want to do it early, you can do that. If anyone needs help with Summit, please feel free to reach out to me, okay? So we'll review these themes, and I also need to put a study guide and a term index online for you guys. Basically, it would be a list that explains all our important concepts, all our important themes, and all our important ideas. There will be a written assessment at the end of our 9 weeks. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Anyone have any concerns? Yes, Ahmad, answer all of them that have been. Quay, are you still here? Quay, are you still here?
Yeah.
Can you stay after class for a few minutes to talk to me? So we can see what's going on with your checkpoints? Okay, anyone else have any questions or concerns before I dismiss? Okay, folks, you are dismissed. Quay, if you'd like to stay, we'll look at what's going on with your grade situation. Anyone else has concerns, please reach out to me. Ahmad, no, the questions are not due today, sir. They haven't been assigned yet. The only ones that are assigned that are overdue right now are checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2. Got it? Okay, so you folks are dismissed. You may go. Have a good afternoon. I will see you on Thursday.